Hi, hey, hello. My brother recently just went to Japan, and while he was there, I asked him to get me as many photos as possible which I could use for my illustrations as references. See, I usually get my references off, funny enough, Google Earth. I quite literally just go around looking for aesthetic places on Google Earth, which is, quite difficult to do because Google Earth is not very aesthetic. Since he was there, I thought it was the perfect opportunity. See, most of my illustrations are Pokémon themed, and Pokémon is from Japan, so it makes sense. I like to use real life references and then implement and put in my own Pokémon in different scenarios, how I'd imagine they may live out their life. Particularly that of a Growlithe and a Pidgey, because, I don't really know, it just started that way and I just continued it like that. This is my 9th one. I've drawn a couple of these and, I'm still fairly new to digital art, so it's been really cool to see my art progressively improve through these illustrations. And while this one isn't particularly the best, I don't think, it was still an enjoyable one to do. The next one, that encompasses majority of this video, is probably my best one yet. Only after I finished this piece, I realized that this handrail is a lot smaller than I thought, and thus the Pidgey is a lot smaller than is meant to be. See, this was actually a whole photo, this one right here, but I just zoomed in to choose this area, and only after did I realize that the proportions are a little bit off. I'm still happy with this piece, all things considered. Now then, on to the next. This piece is probably my best one yet. I got this reference off Pinterest. I stumbled upon it just by chance. I wasn't even looking for references for Pokemon illustrations, but so often I come across things, references, that just scream to me. I don't know how to explain it, but there's particular images that when you see them, you just know you have to make an art piece out of them. And this was one of those images. Similar to the last one, this was also part of a larger picture, this one right here. And I just zoomed in to the area that I wanted to capture. And this one, I really wanted to capture the essence of summer rain. It was just in my mind, and that's just what this picture screamed to me. That's what I wanted this picture to scream. Summer rain. So that's what I tried to go for. And it certainly took a lot of time. I think this may have been one of the most time-consuming illustrations I've done. That's because I like to work in, parts. I don't do it all at once because, quite honestly, it would just take way too long. But this one to me is just the definition of trusting the process, because the entire time I was doing it, I knew that I was working towards it looking good, but whilst I was doing it, it just did not look good. And in the end, I was very happy that I really just stuck with my gut, because honestly, in the beginning, I was ready to give up this one multiple times. I think the reason that this piece, for a lot of it, looked very off is because that in the reference there's rain, and obviously I didn't draw the rain until much later, so it just made everything look a bit strange. Like the ground, it had water droplets on, but there was no rain, and it just looked off. And as you'll see, when I finally do draw that rain, it just makes the whole piece click. Everything just works after that. I struggled with drawing this stoplight quite a lot because, obviously with the rain it distorts the light, and so you have to keep that in mind when you're drawing it. But not only that, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to keep it in because it pulls the viewer's eye a great deal. It takes away from what I would like to be, the center point. It's very distracting. And in the end, I did keep it. But I'm still not sure if it's too distracting for your eye, if it pulls away from what should be the main part of the illustration, which is obviously the Pokémon and still to come. I also really tried to keep in mind something that I determined in one of my previous videos, my tendency to focus too much on details and kind of be a bit of a perfectionist with my art. It takes away from my enjoyment of it, and so I try to actively avoid doing that, even if it's at the expense of a little bit greater detail. I found with quite a number of my recent pieces that, keeping this in mind, that less detail is sometimes more. And does that make sense? No, but it's art, so I can do what I want. At this top bit here with these signs and panels and whatnot, I had quite a bit of trouble with these, and to be honest I don't think they turned out very well, and I was kind of just hoping that the rain would distract people so people wouldn't realize. You'll probably notice now more that I'm talking about it, so just ignore it, I guess. As long as this one took, I can definitely say it was one of the more fun ones I've done. The rain, making everything wet, and then the light reflecting off everything was just really fun to draw. And just in general, this piece was just a really fun one to do. All the pieces where the lighting is more dynamic, I found, are a lot more fun. Say, example, this one. There's not much lighting going in this one, and although I would say this is one of my better ones, if not maybe my best, the lack of dynamic lighting kind of weighs it down, which is of course because I often use Google Earth to find my references, and Google Earth lacks any dynamic lighting of any sorts. So I want to start implementing my own dynamic lighting to the ones that lack it to make them look better, because after all, I really want to be able to take references and improve on them. I'm not really looking to just copy and paste it, and I did with this one, but that's because this one already just looked very nice. With the trees, I did what I usually do, where I take a hard opacity brush and I use the lasso tool to make clumps of leaves, and I do love how this makes it look. It makes it look very nice in my opinion. However, I am starting to realize that it needs a bit more shadows in the trees. I think if I were to have taken a soft brush and given it a bit more depth, it would have looked a little bit better. For example, in this one, if you look at these leaves, I used a soft brush for this, at least a little bit of a soft brush. I also used a full opacity brush, but I think that the soft brush just really adds something to it. It adds depth. At this point in the illustration, I really began to feel like all the pieces were just coming together, and I started to really feel confident in the end product. Before, as I said, it was kind of like a matter of trusting the process. Now, once I started with the background, it just felt like it was all coming together, and I feel like I could see the moment that I would add the rain in, it would just all work. I don't know if it's just me, but whenever I'm busy with a piece, there's always a sudden hurrah moment where I just feel like the whole thing will come together. And for this piece, it was the top. When I drew that, I just had this feeling that this piece is going to work out exactly how I wanted to. I just had this inkling that I could nail everything else. I find oftentimes when I'm drawing, before that hurrah moment, I feel like I'm always gambling. I'm not sure if the piece will come out how I want it to come out. But then I hit that hurrah moment and it all just suddenly feels like it'll work. It's the same type of thing that I was talking about with references earlier. You come across certain ones where it's just like perfect, when you know you have to use it. It's that same moment during the illustration. There's certain moments where it all just clicks, it all just works, and that has to be in the top 5 feelings of art, when you just get the perfect idea or the perfect reference and you know exactly what you want to create out of what you're seeing, and that it will work. I've been questioning what is it in certain references that draws my eye, and I often think it's the fairly simple generic things. Like, for example, in this one, it was the utility pole. I mean, the colors of this image are also very nice, but what captured my eye and what made me want to illustrate this image was the utility pole. And generally it is stuff like that. It's simple stuff. It's utility poles, staircases, railings. It's that sort of stuff that pulls me into an image. They're also not objectively interesting things, but they make the environment just a little bit more engaging, which is another thing with a lot of these illustrations. I'm not going for epic scenes or anything like that. I'm really trying to capture, in essence, the simplicity, really just the everyday life of these two Pokemon. I do love to draw more epic scenes. For example, I love doing pieces like this, but with these Pokemon illustrations, I'm not trying to go for anything grandiose. I'm really just trying to capture something simple, because there is something so beautiful about simple art. Even in my more epic fantasy illustrations, because I love fantasy, I love epic fantasy, but even in those, I tend to try and capture like an essence of silence and peacefulness in the, not even in the mundane, but in the grandiose. Like, for example, this one, it's, to me, it's peaceful, but there is still this grandiose epicness to it. Or this one here, it's fantasy, but there's not that much going on. It's simple, it's peaceful. It's something I've noticed in doing art for a while now, is that all of my favorite pieces capture a feeling. They capture some sort of vibe. And I know how cheap it sounds to say it captures a vibe, but it's true. Like, if I look at this piece, this one to me doesn't really capture anything. It's just an illustration. But this one strikes something. It makes me feel something. You know, my favorite quote is from J.R.R. Tolkien. It was in an interview, and he was asked if he wanted to be remembered as a person who made something or as a person who said something. And in response, he said that the made thing, unless it says something, won't be remembered. And I try to install that into all of my pieces, to try and keep that in mind when creating something. I want it to say something, and it doesn't have to say anything big or anything. Like, art doesn't have to be a political stance or a statement. It just has to capture something. That's why AI art doesn't work, because it captures nothing. There's nothing to it. AI doesn't know what solitude feels like or what happiness feels like. It can describe it to you by definition, but I mean, ask yourself, can you even describe what happiness is? You can't, because it's not something that you describe, it's just something you feel. And AI does not feel. Think of it for a moment. Think of what solitude means to you, or happiness. Every one of your interpretations is subjective. We all have our own experiences. And now think of an AI that scours through millions of interpretations and accumulates them all together to make some generalized assumption. None of it's going to apply to you. None of it. Feelings are entirely subjective. You can't describe what it feels like to be happy if you don't know what it feels like to be sad. I don't usually add characters to these Pokemon illustrations, and by characters I mean people in particular. I've only done one before this that has had a person, and it was this one. But all the rest, I intentionally left out people because, well, for one, I wanted the focus point to be on the Pokemon, on the Growlithe and Pidgey. But at the same time, I just battled to draw people a lot, and after spending so long on these backgrounds, I just don't feel like spending much time on the people. So when I did this character, this guy, I was quite shocked at how easy and how quickly I managed to draw him. And I kind of nailed exactly what I was wanting. I was wanting what looked like an oldish, maybe 40-ish, old businessman who was coming home from work, and he gave up his umbrella, allowing himself to get wet in the rain to cover the already wet Growlithe. And I think I actually captured exactly what I wanted to capture with this character, with this guy. And I'm actually quite proud of myself, because usually my people don't look that great, and I usually try to avoid facial expressions when I can, because I'm not amazing at them. But this time I just went for it, and it turned out great. I wanted to essentially just capture a guy doing a good deed, and it almost seems redundant for this guy to be giving the umbrella to the Growlithe and Pidgey when they're already wet, but I felt like it was more symbolic than anything. I don't know, maybe I looked too much into it, but that's what I felt from this, and I like that interpretation. I feel like in a lot of media of all sorts, with older characters, they're always a little bit more stern and they lack a bit of that childlike wonder, and I suppose that's because, as you grow up, you're kind of expected to leave that behind. But I'm 21, and I still love Pokemon. I still love everything I loved as a child, and I just can't imagine a point in my life where I will lose that. And something else I love is to just be in the rain. And this character, I wanted him to be an older gentleman, which I think I nailed the look of, and I imagined him just really enjoying being in the rain. I think it's often the little things that tell you what type of person someone is, and that is both in real life and in fiction and in these illustrations. I thought the perfect Pokemon to add into this piece would be Lotads. In fact, the first time I saw this image, I just had this vision of Lotads walking in the water that's running along the sidewalk, and I just wanted to bring that into fruition. And so that's what I did here. This Growlithe, through the other illustrations, has historically been very curious, so I wanted to capture that here. And I feel like slowly this Growlithe has started to form a personality. I feel like almost subconsciously I've been giving them attributes and actions and features that have almost developed their personalities further. And I didn't particularly mean to. I had an idea of what they would act like. I always imagined the Growlithe to be playful and the Pidgey to kind of just be curious of the Growlithe. There was nothing really more to it, at the time at least. I always imagined, over the course of these illustrations, the Pidgey would warm up to the Growlithe, but it feels like it's gone further than that they've actually developed personalities. And I know how that sounds. It sounds kind of stupid, but it's true, it's through little actions that I've illustrated them doing that I feel like they no longer feel stagnant. Like, for example, just the growler not bothering to look at the man with the umbrella, maybe not even noticing because he's too distracted by the Lotats, whereas the Pidgey is actively looking, curious as to why the rain has suddenly stopped. I feel like that just pinpoints their personality, and it's so simple. But these little showcases of personality through their actions, I feel like it just makes the illustration so much better.